Thanks for tuning in to leftcoastnews.net, news and information from the wacky, sometimes communist, liberal West Coast of the United States. For more, visit leftcoastnews.net. Well, here's your update for the goings-on in Olympia by our wonderful legislature. I talked about SB 5462 the other day. This is the bill that would inject LGBTQ learning into K through 12 education. It makes its instructional material much like, well, it includes it with ethnic instruction on different ethnicities, on immigrants who have come to the U.S., that sort of thing. Again, sexual orientation is not ethnicity, and your sexual orientation is a personal matter between you and yourself and your maker or whoever else, but not the public school system. And if this is going to be included in public school system, it should be between you and a counselor and not a teacher and a classroom. I also talked about how the American Academy of Pediatrics has released a study showing that gender-affirming therapy and transgenderism is creating mental health issues in America's youth. And it is causing suicidal ideation and a whole host of other problems. Europe has moved away from it, but yet the U.S. continues down this path. Why is that? Europe refers those kids to a mental health therapy now. But we still continue to push this agenda. And the Senate this morning had a meeting and discussed this bill again, and it has passed the chamber. So on to the House it goes. Something I didn't mention the other day was that if this passes, parents will not be able to opt their children out of this educational material. That's right, you won't be able to opt your children out of it. That in itself right there is completely off the rails. You as a parent should have a right to opt your children out of whatever you feel they should be opted out of. Whatever your beliefs or moral standards tell you or dictate for your family. The school system is not running a prison system with your children. You control your children, not the state government. The other thing I noticed when I was going through some of the comments that people left about this bill, it makes no mention of women whatsoever in the educational materials when it lists out all the groups of people that need to be included in this for public instruction. Nothing about women. That seems odd to me. But I guess when you're promoting things like transgenderism, you can't talk about one sex or the other, right? Because it's just fluid. In the minds of these Democrats, there's no such thing as man or woman. Anyway, the insanity with this bill continues. I suggest you reach out again to your representatives and let them know you don't approve of this. I'm sure there's going to be more hearings in the House, so sign up for testimony and leave your opinion. I saw a lot of cons on that bill that were left by the public, and it seems as though those Democrats just chose to ignore what people thought. Big surprise. And this bill has a hearing today. Another bill addressing criminal rights. This is Senate Bill 5974. This bill would make debts from juvenile non-restitution legal financial obligations null and void and considered satisfied and paid in full by July 1st, 2027. It allows the proceeding judge of a superior court to authorize an administrative process to waive outstanding debt and authorizes the clerk of the Superior Court to seek a judicial order to waive outstanding debt in a specified manner. A little background on this bill: juvenile legal financial obligations. Prior to 2023, courts were authorized to impose legal financial obligations as part of the judgment and sentence for juveniles adjudicated of a criminal offense. Just like big boys and girls, if you go to court and you're found guilty of something, even if you don't serve time, there is often a financial penalty. Legal financial obligations, LFOs. LFOs include victim restitution, court costs, criminal offense fines, the crime victim penalty assessment, and other fees, penalties, and assessments, because you're costing the system money and somebody's got to pay for it besides those of us that are working for a living. Yes, the criminals should have to help pay for some of their BS. Correct? Correct. Well, legislation enacted in 2023 prohibits the imposition or collection of any fine, administrative fee, cost, or surcharge by the court or any agent of the court against any juvenile or a juvenile's parent or guardian or other person with custody of the juvenile in connection with any juvenile offender proceeding. This includes, but is not limited to, fees for diversion, DNA sampling, or victims' penalty assessments. A judgment against a juvenile for LFOs other than restitution is not enforceable after July 1st, 2023, and the Superior Court clerk must not accept any non-restitutional LFO payments from a juvenile after July 1st, 2023. The 2023 legislation also eliminated the $100 crime victim penalty assessment for juveniles who were found to have committed a most serious offense. Upon motion, the court must waive any crime victim penalty assessment previously imposed upon a juvenile. A new account was created in the state treasury to mitigate the fiscal impact from elimination of the crime victim penalty assessment on juveniles and indigent adults. These kids in this state get a free pass on everything. I've talked about some of the other legislation going through about getting them out early and all this other garbage. And now there's no financial penalties either. There's nothing. Just give them a free pass. And I've talked about how juveniles are committing more and more crimes, serious, violent felony crimes in this state, because of the lax attitude towards them, because of the lack of punishment, the lack of consequences, the lack of responsibility, or them being held to any amount of responsibility. Absolute garbage. This bill will make any debt from the imposition of a legal financial obligation other than restitution shall be rendered null and void and considered satisfied and paid in full by July 1st, 2027. The presiding judge of a superior court may at any time authorize an administrative process to waive outstanding juvenile non-restitution LFO debt that ensures that debts are waived within any statutorily required deadlines, do not affect an individual's credit, are recalled from any collections agency, and do not appear in any background check. Again, free pass, no consequences, nothing that stings that might make you think twice about committing that crime again. No lasting consequence to make you think about your actions. Nothing. They're just taking it all away and just letting them run wild. And it's pretty obvious when you look at the headlines in the news every night and see these crimes that are going on. Anyway, this passed the Senate, moves on to the House. So actually, go on the website and leave a comment about this. It's just absolute trash. I talked about this bill, Senate Bill 5843 previously. It's making its way through, probably going to go to the House. It's a hearing today, I think at 1:30. This requires every county to install and maintain an intrusion detection system to monitor their network and to disclose certain malicious activity or breaches of security of information. Establishes violations and penalties related to election interference, including prohibited interference by election observers, interference with the operation of a voting center, destruction of certain election supplies and materials, and unauthorized access to election administration locations and systems. The most troubling part of this bill, it authorizes the Secretary of State to certify the results of an election if a county canvassing board refuses to certify the results of the election without cause. Well, who determines what the cause is? The state, no doubt. So if for some reason your county decides that the results of the election are not accurate, the state can come in and say, no, we're certifying the results. If a county canvassing board refuses to certify the results of an election without cause, the Secretary of State may examine the records, ballots, and results of the election and certify the results of the election. The Secretary of State's certification must be completed within 2 business days after the certification deadline for the election, after the refusal of the county canvassing board to certify the results of the election. The state is usurping your rights as a voter, your wishes as a county, if they decide that the reason the county board doesn't want to certify the results is not a good reason. And then the state will decide who won said election in your county and not you. So basically, this is the state telling these counties to go along with the program or we'll just make the decision without you. This is absolutely wrong. The state has no business meddling into counties' business in this way. It's funny because the staff summary of public testimony for the bill is a shield against attacks on our democratic system and a safeguard for our election systems against sabotage. It's a commitment to every citizen to have their votes counted and voices heard. Really? So if your county board sees a reason why something is wrong with the election, but the state doesn't, then your voices don't count. The state should not be meddling in county business. We need to ensure our elections are above reproach and outside influence. This bill will ensure valid election results will be certified and that there are consequences for someone trying to disrupt our election process. These elections are completely a sham, Some of these local elections, I think, are still on the up and up, and your vote probably matters. But honestly, most of these elections in these especially blue states and the federal elections, they're bought and paid for. Your vote doesn't mean crap. You've got so much outside influence in these elections on both sides of the aisle. Any concept or thought that these elections are completely 100% legit and accurate, I think is just, I think you're kidding yourself if you believe that. All these electronic voting machines that we use now, all these computers can be manipulated and hacked. All these systems can be broken into. We need to go back to the old punch ticket, hand count, and even that, of course, can be manipulated. There's just, I don't know what the answer is, but using computers more and more for our voting needs is not the way to go. And I think you can see that with just everything else going on. Like all these systems in the United States that get hacked. Whether it's your banking systems, your credit card systems, your energy systems, grocery store systems, all these things. It's just on the increase. So to think that somehow our voting systems are immune from that, or it's not happening, when it's happening to every other computer system in the country? You've got your head in the sand if you truly don't believe that's happening. Senate Bill 5890, which is an act to reduce ballot rejection rates through updates to ballot curing, canvassing, reporting, and outreach processes. My main problem with this bill is it requires county auditors to contact voters by phone or email when notifying voters their ballot is unsigned or their signature does not match the one on file. If a voter neglects to sign a ballot declaration or the voter's signature does not match the signature on the registration file, the county auditor must notify the voter by first-class mail, and if the auditor has a telephone number or email address on file for a voter, by phone, text message, or email, and notify the voter their ballot is unsigned or the signature does not match, and advise them of the correct procedures for completing the unsigned declaration or updating their signature on the voter registration file. If the voter has been notified by first-class mail and has not responded at least 5 business days before the final meeting of the canvassing board, or if the voter's ballot with a missing or mismatched signature is received within 5 days of the final meeting of the canvassing board, then the county auditor must attempt to notify the voter by phone, text, or email. If the auditor calls a voter and the voter doesn't answer, the auditor must leave a voicemail message if voicemail is available. The amount of extra work and effort this is going to cause the auditor's office is ridiculous. If you are too stupid to follow simple instructions on how to fill out a ballot, then guess what? It just isn't going to count. The ballot is not a complicated thing at all. It's about as basic as you can possibly get for all these mouth breathers that vote in this state. How far is something like this going to stretch out election results too? If they have a bunch of ballots, or say they have a bunch of ballots that are unsigned or signed improperly, and then they've got to reach out and wait 5 days and recount and all this garbage, give me a break. This is ridiculous. How much is this going to cost a county? How much time are they going to have to spend on this that they don't already have? They're probably understaffed like every other agency in the state. These county and government offices already don't function properly. They don't operate efficiently or effectively. And now you're going to load this on them too? To reach out and contact all these people and try to explain to them how to fill out a freaking ballot? Sorry, you're out of luck if you can't figure out how to mark your choices and sign your ballot and send it in. This makes no sense to me. It should not be done. Again, if you're that stupid, you just shouldn't vote. Senate Bill 6157 will allow undocumented immigrants, DACA status, to apply for public civil service positions such as firefighters, police officers, corrections officers, fish and wildlife officers. And it can give them up to 15% added to their test score when they're testing to get hired. Specifically if they have bilingual status, education, or experience, or if they've done things like work for the Peace Corps. I mean, you can't make this up. Washington, of course, ranks among the top 10 states of residence for individuals with DACA status. Imagine that. Almost 15,000 DACA recipients in Washington that they know of. I mean, are these really the people? They're not citizens. Should they be holding law enforcement positions? Firefighting positions? I don't know. Maybe, but I feel like those positions should be going to citizens of this country. And you shouldn't be giving them extra credit to get these jobs over citizens of this country who need jobs, good paying jobs. Of course, they talk about the significant priority for cities to increase the number of law enforcement officers, and more importantly, for the police force to fully represent the diverse communities that they serve. Well, they're Americans, and so the officers should be Americans. We want officers to be bilingual or multilingual and to have experience in things like the Peace Corps and social services. Cops are not social services. That's what these special teams that are being set up all over the state are for, that respond with the police. It is not the police force's job to be social service workers at all. On top of this, you're creating a policy to allow these non-citizens to carry a firearm, which in and of itself seems like a legal problem to me. But of course, this state is willing to work around all the legal problems for undocumented non-citizens. Meanwhile, they work very hard at taking your firearm rights away. Again, this is just more woke fodder for the state. This last thing I want to talk about is the firearms bills that are currently making their way through legislation. Senator Jeff Wilson sent me a letter with these bills pertaining to firearms on here, and the ones that are progressing and stalled, and I'm only going to talk about the ones that are progressing. HB 1903, lost or stolen firearms, requires one to report the loss or theft to local law enforcement within 24 hours, or you can be held. You can be fined for that. I think there's some criminal charges that can be filed. This is progressing. Firearm disposition authorizes local governments. This is HB 2021. And law enforcement agencies to dispose of forfeited firearms through a transfer to a museum. That is progressing. HB 2118, firearms dealers, adds a series of new requirements to firearms dealers, including $1 million liability insurance. Firearms sensitive places, SB 5444, prohibits individuals from entering libraries, zoos, aquariums, and transit stations. Someplace you should definitely be carrying a gun, a transit station, while knowingly possessing a weapon. SB 5985, firearms background checks, requires the department to keep records of all firearm background checks. They're going to keep you on a list. And Senate Bill 6246, this is firearm info and mental health, prohibits firearms for those with involuntary commitment and prohibits restoration of rights in cases of extreme risk protection orders. Those are the ones that are currently progressing. The others are stalled, and there is a number of them. Anyway, again, leg.wa.gov will take you to the homepage for the legislature where you can look all these bills up, leave comments, email your representatives, find out who they are if you don't know. But I suggest that you take an active approach to your legislative body. Make sure your opinion is known because it matters. And even with these Democrats, in most cases, if they get a lot of flack or a lot of pushback, these bills will go away. So just do your part. All right, folks. Thanks for listening to Left Coast News. For more, visit leftcoastnews.net. Please subscribe, like, and share to your social media. We appreciate your support.